Hello and welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Today we're going to talk about how to lead when you're not in control. Before we get anywhere, I'm going to ask you, if you haven't already, subscribe to this new channel we put out just for the 360 Leadership Podcast, as well as wherever it is that you consume your podcast, whether it's Apple or Google or Amazon or Spotify, you will find us there. Please do subscribe to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. So on this topic of how to lead when you're not in control, today we're going to delve into what it looks like when either you are not the leader that others want to follow, or followers are moving in a different direction, or the situation is novel or has switched and you're wondering what to do. I'm going to ask you, before we delve into the content, if you can also, after we are done today and you're thinking, wait, this really was of value to me, please do like it. Please do leave a review. We're going to share these reviews on the next episodes. And this is a way of telling everybody else, listen, there is such value on this channel. There's such value to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. And they will in turn come and benefit from our episodes, both from when we have guest interviews and when we go into these weekly deep dives on leadership how-to. So right into the content. What do you do? How do you lead when you're not in control? And the first thing I say before you do anything, because we all like doing, right? Before you do anything, I'm going to ask you to pause and take stock of what's happening around you. Pause and ask yourself, what am I actually facing? What am I dealing with here that is going to affect how I lead? When pressured to make a decision, I am going to ask you to do something that is counterintuitive, and that is, rather than move right into the action of responding, most of the times reacting to what is happening around you, I'm going to ask you instead to step back and ask yourself, what am I actually dealing with? So that's number one. When you're not in control, how do you lead? You lead first by pausing. You lead first, not by acting, but by pulling back a little bit and asking yourself, what am I even facing here? The second thing that you do on leading when you're not in control is assessing the situation. Okay, so what is at play? Who are the players? What is required? What are the possible scenarios and outcomes that can come out of this thing? When you take stock of your environment, when you take stock of the other people that are involved, or those that can pull levers to make things happen, or those that are affected by decisions that you make, it puts you in a better position for you to move forward in the next decision. The third thing that you do on leading when you're not in control is identifying the need. Just because things are up in the air, just because there is an emergency at times, or just because somebody's barking commands and wants to see things move, doesn't necessarily mean that you, the leader, are the person to take that action. That you specifically, by name, are the person to move things. So when you assess the need, most of the time, you may find that there are other players that can come in to support you. Or you may find that there's certain things that may not be within your purview, and you can take them to the right people. Or you can actually go back and say, there's nothing that can be done here. We're just going to ride this out, right? So it is really key to assess the need and then look inward and say, is this actually something for me to do? I'm going to give you an example. There are times as leaders when, let's say, there's a conflict in our teams, or conflict in our organizations, not with us, but with other people. We really want to step in and do something about it. But we have to remember, we are dealing with adults, different personalities, different temperaments, and they may be situations or facts that we're not privy to. And rather than helicopter shoot in and do something, this could be an opportunity to step away and see how the people under your leadership are going to react, how this situation is going to play itself out. or something happens in the marketplace, and all of a sudden there are changes that are affecting stock prices, or there are changes that are affecting employee let's say, I'm trying to look at something that is neutral, that could be outside of your maybe it's laws and regulations, right? That is outside of your control. Well, you're going to, in most situations, wait to see what is really going on, what is the need, how does it play out, and if at all, what your specific role is to address this, to mitigate it. So assess the need, and then come back and look at yourself and ask yourself, am I even the person to take on this charge? Am I even the person to intervene in this? Number 4, I'd like you to map stakeholders' power. Now, I want to speak of power in this regard. People have power to manage resources, to decide how they allocate them, who gets access to what and who does not. Power also comes by way of relationships. Some people by legitimate power, other people in the position of leadership. Some people have referent power, and that means through relationships that they have harnessed over the years, they're able to call in favors, they're able to influence certain constituencies out of relationship. Some people maybe have coercive power. They can threaten punishment. So I'd like you to map out in this situation where you feel you don't have the control. You're not the person who's going to call the shots and for things to move. You're going to map out who is. You're going to map out the different types of stakeholder powers that exist, so that you can see what the next thing is going to be, how you can reach out to them for support. So some of the things that I have personally faced in leadership is where I have noticed that different groups and cliques and identities have formed in teams and other organized groups, such that even where you are the leader in the leadership position, the legitimate ultimate leader at the top, there are others. They could be peers, they could be colleagues, they could be maybe people by virtue of age or seniority in the organization that are listened to at their level. And so you don't have to then, as a leader, try to exercise your legitimate power. You might then look at who else is out here. Who else among the stakeholders that are facing this issue that I am not in control of can influence decisions, can influence outcomes favorably? And you're going to turn to these others and make a decision to I'm going to number 5 now, seek their counsel and support to resolve this issue. When you are a leader that is not in control, it is still on you as a leader to make sure that you're leading yourself, you're leading others, you're leading the organization, and you're possibly influencing the industry towards a certain outcome. But what do you do when you're not in control? Do you just say, oh, well, it's above me, it's above my pay grade, it's not on me? Influencing outcomes doesn't have to be just for those on the leadership seat. You can influence outcomes even when you're not the person in the seat, the ultimate, buck stops here seat that makes decisions from. You can map to find out who else is there and seek their counsel, seek their buy-in, seek their formal recommendation or formal endorsement, or seek their partnership in influencing the outcomes that must be reached. Just because you are not in control does not mean you are not accountable. So even though you may not have the power to sway things in your favor or to lead the charge to the positive outcomes that you seek, it is still on you to find out who does and to enlist them so that you can all get to the other side successfully. And number 6, now that you have sought, now that you know who else is around you, what kind of power they have, whether it's power to influence others, whether they have the resources that you might need to see yourself through this situation that you're not in control of, or they, by virtue of seniority, by virtue of relationship, by virtue of maybe even age, if you come from a culture where it really matters to hear from your elders, that you're bringing in. It could be that there's a person, they may not be the most senior, they may not be the most popular, but maybe they have access to resources or a technology that others don't know, and all of a sudden this is the most powerful person in the room. And so they come in and maybe they have expert power, and people would defer to them because they are the expert in this situation, and they can influence the others to take certain course of action that you may not be able to, even though you're the leader, because you don't have the expert power to guide them correctly. So never make it an either or. Either I am the leader and I am influencing everything, or if it is out of my control, then hands off. Just because it is out of your control and possibly beyond your power does not mean you're not accountable to map out who else exists and what kind of power they have, whether it's expert, whether it's legitimate, whether it is referent in terms of relationship, whether it's coercive power, that they have the power to punish or not, like regulators, like the government, for instance. Find out who else has the power. Find out who else is in control, but still it is for you as a leader to influence the outcomes that you would like to have so that things move smoothly. So number 6 is chart a course and get feedback before you implement this course. I'm going to recap when we started. You're a leader that is not in control, and you'd like to know, how do I lead when I'm not in control? How do I lead when I'm not the ultimate person in the leadership seat? Maybe there are others in other positions. Maybe now there are stakeholders that are involved that are outside of my narrow plane. How do I lead when it is not, when all the resources, the decision making doesn't rest with me? So you're going to pause and reflect, and you're going to ask yourself, what is really the situation? What is the need? Is there something for me to do? Who else is around me as you map your stakeholders and the power they have? Who else is around me? What kind of influence do they have? What kind of resources? What kind of power? What kind of access that I can seek counsel from and support to lead us to this ultimate end? Because even though I may not be in control, I am the leader who is ultimately accountable for the outcomes that we're going to have. And then now that you have their input, chart out a course of what it looked like. It doesn't have to be a sure and a definitive roadmap, but it certainly is a course. Maybe you hold it loosely, not so tightly, a course that you can take through this situation where you're not in control. And before you take that course of action, listen to this. Lean in, please. Before you take that course of action, because you are not the leader who is in control, you want to go back to those that you feel have the leadership power, the legitimate, the expert, the referent, the coercive, the even maybe power to punish, right? Those to penalize, those that do have the power, and let them know, listen, from the input, when I sought your counsel and you gave us support and you gave us input, this is what I have understood is at stake. And this is the course of action that I would like us to take to transition through. Do you agree? What do you think? And of course, this may be several stakeholders that you're speaking to. And on receiving their feedback, then and only then implement. Why am I saying this? Because if you're not the leader who is in control, if you're not the one that everybody is looking to, if you're not the one that can make decisions on what goes and what doesn't, what resources allocated where, who gets them and who doesn't, you don't want to start taking leadership decisions without going back to consult those that do have the power, that can influence the ultimate outcomes. You want to go back and say, when I sought your counsel and you gave me this advice, I went and I took this action. I have charted out a course. Does this look like what you were guiding me on? Even if it's a group of people, does this look like what you were saying? Would it be all right to implement this? So that later they don't come back and say, we don't even know where he or she came from with this. This is not what we would have advised. We are surprised that they went off and made this decision, right? You're thinking, I am ultimately accountable for my people, for the organization. I am a thought leader that others are looking to in my industry. So I would like to do something because I'm accountable to get us to our expected end. But since I'm not the leader in control, you know it is really important for you to consult those that do have decision-making power or resource allocation power or access to networks and access to influence, so that at the end of the day, they don't come back and say, we don't know where they came from. We don't know where she came from. We don't know where he came from doing that. He or she is all on their own. No. You're going to go back. You're going to listen to their counsel. You're going to share what you have charted out based on their counsel. You're going to get their approval, and as much as you can, get their names, their faces, and their signatures on what you're doing. Ask them to either formally officiate this course of action. Ask them to come on board and maybe be the face of this course of action. Ask them to sign and say, we are definitely moving forward in this thing. And because, we think it's a great idea, I approve or we approve. So that when you start moving as a leader who is not currently in control, it's not going to come back and blow up in your face. It's going to be something that you have done after having sought counsel, that you have those that you know are the experts in the area, or they have the legitimate leadership positions in this area. They have the power, they have the resources, they have the access and the influence. Getting them on board is going to get you in a safer place to influence the outcomes that you must. Number 7, this is going to be humbling. Just play at your strengths. If you are a leader that is not in control, yet you still must lead because you're ultimately accountable. If there are other people that in this context have expert power, they have the expertise. If others, they have access and networks, they have the relation, by virtue of being unionized, right? They have a common identity, a group identity that makes them feel that they belong together, and together they can form a force and a voice that could be greater than yours. You don't want to play at, fake it, or try to assume anything that you are not comfortable with. A person that I follow, and I have mentioned him several times, is Dave Ramsey, and he speaks about finance and investment, etc. And he says, never sign up for anything you don't understand. Don't sign up to get the service. Don't sign up to teach the thing. I recently just came through a program from Amy Porterfield, and she was talking about online course creation. And she was saying, do not speak about any topic. Do not teach on any topic that you haven't been able to get results for yourself or for others. And so if you're in a situation that you're not in control, things are new to you, things have gone sideways. This is, whether the situation or the people, there is something new. Maybe it's a change, maybe it's a transition. You just want to play at your strengths. Don't pretend to be anything you are not. As a leader, I want you to have the courage and the humility to accept this thing. That although you are the leader, you cannot know everything. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot learn everything. Even if you know a lot, you don't have the time in 24 hours a day to implement everything by yourself. which is why you're going to hire people of a certain caliber and certain competencies and certain character, which is why you're going to empower and be able to delegate confidently to those that you trust who have the expertise, who may have the access and the relationships, who may even have the influence amongst peers, amongst those senior to you, or even your direct reports. Leadership requires us to be humble enough to say, I know my limits. I know where I end. I know what my strengths are, and I know where I need to staff my weaknesses. And you have the courage, the humility, the servanthood to get out of your way, to only play at your strengths, and then get out of people's way to do what they can do, which is far better than you. And that is okay. It does not threaten you as a leader. Number 8, and what you do to lead when you're not in control is then leverage your networks. Propose people on your team or in another team. Propose somebody outside the organization that you think could do a better job than you. In many contexts where I have been sought out for the services that I do offer, for the expertise that I do have, for any reason, whether I just don't have the bandwidth, I do not have the time, the energy, or it could be there's something else happening, I would say I'm not in a position to do that, I would recommend someone. Or if something comes my way that I think, wait a second, I think I can do 50% of this. The other 50%, shoo, it's over my head. Or it's something I could do, but it is something I don't naturally feel I have an affinity for, that I have an aptitude for. Recommend someone else. Turn it down and say, I'm a person of integrity. I'm a person who really would like to deliver excellence. And I do not think in this situation, I will be the best person for the job. And let's leverage your networks. Let them know who else that they can go to. You, instead of trying to be all things, play at your strengths and then leverage your networks for everything else that is needed in this situation that you as a leader cannot provide. Number 9, as you're implementing, make sure to schedule periodic progress reports. I would say continuously report on your progress, not just at the beginning when you started out, not mid, not at the end. Continuously both go back to those that had counseled you on the course of action you're taking, continuously report to those that are affected by the outcomes that you're by the processes, by the changes, by the situation which you're not in control of. Continuously report how things are going so that they didn't hear from you at the beginning, and then they only hear from you either at the end or when something goes wrong in the middle. Especially when you're not in control, you don't want to go quiet and give the impression that you are in control, to give the impression that, oh, I've got this. When you go quiet, people will assume all things are well, because if they were not well, you would have said something. So whether things are going well or not, schedule in and agree with stakeholders when you will be reporting on progress, on how things are going. And when I use that word progress, I don't mean that things will necessarily always be progressing well. I just mean as things unfold, make sure that you report. And then number 10, when you're not in control, here you are, you have charted out a path after you have sought counsel, and you're reporting on how things are going. Number 10 is pivot with real-time insights. Do not hold onto your plan so dearly, so closely, so jealously guarding them when it's a situation not in control. It's probably a situation that is new. You're going through things that you cannot predict. On a good day, in the most familiar terrain, you still cannot predict 100% how things are going to go. How much worse will it be in situations where not in control, where things are novel? So you want to make sure that you actually gather data as things go along, and you review your original plan, the original course that you had charted out, to see where you need to pivot so that you can get better outcomes. So maybe you're going to pause. Maybe you're going to change course. Maybe you're going to change people. Maybe you're changing strategy. Maybe you're changing the goal. Maybe you're removing yourself from the picture and saying, you know what, I've taken it this far. I truly have a feeling I'm going to botch this up if I continue. May I please ask you to proceed with somebody else on this, because I am not the man or I am not the woman for the job for this. So get real-time insights to inform you on what action to take, and have the courage to pivot, have the courage to change things as you go. Be flexible and adaptable enough. Even though you started out with something that you thought would get you to an ultimate outcome, have the courage, the flexibility, the adaptability, the maturity to say, this is not going as we thought. And so I recommend this pivot. I propose this pivot, even if it's pivoting yourself out of a situation. It does not remove you as a leader. As a matter of fact, I think that will affirm your leadership, that you care more about the vision, you care more about the people, the organization, the industry. You care more about the collective outcomes than about you being the be all and end all star of the show. Number 11, what to do when you're not in control as a leader is to document and share lessons learned. Right? Number 10 was about getting data that will inform you on how things are going and pivoting from the insights that you gather. Number 11 is about then taking stock of everything, documenting absolutely everything you're going through, and then sharing lessons learned with others. What you want to do, and I'm gonna bring number 12 into this, is you want to create personal, team, organization, or industry frameworks that will then improve future outcomes from these learnings. You're going through something where you are not in control. You're doing the best that you can. From number 1 to 10 is really just doing the best that you can, finding out who else can help, finding out, really assessing yourself honestly to see how far you can go and what you can take on, what you cannot. You want to document lessons learned so that then you can prepare for similar situations that may arise in the future. And now you won't go in blindsided. You will go in with the benefit of hindsight from having dealt with this situation where you are not in control. So it is so key when you're going through something, not just to survive it, right? Sometimes we just, I am so grateful I just survived that thing. I wasn't in control. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got some people together, I got support, and we're on the other side of it. That is not enough. Make sure to also document and share lessons learned and create frameworks, create processes, create safeguards to either mitigate against similar things happening in future or be a guide to others that should this come along, this is what we learned the last time. And I think that is great leadership when you're able to document what you had learned through a process and create a framework from it, create a method, create a process, propose things that others then can apply to have better outcomes in future should a similar situation arise. And number 13 then is share recommendations. So you've documented, this is what happened. This is how I handled it. The stakeholders that came along, this is the course of action we took. This is how we pivoted along the way to make sure we're still guiding the team, the organization, still guiding, could even be the nation, right, toward the outcomes that we seek. These are the recommendations for us moving forward, so that we're not caught off guard again, so that we are not isolated, so that we're not scrambling for what to do. These are the recommendations. These are the protocols I would recommend that we have in place for the next time. And then get stakeholder buy-in to implement these new protocols. Don't just recommend, get buy-in. We've been through a situation that was completely out of my control. I went in, I got other support. We were able to together navigate through this with a lot of pivots and twists and turns. But these are the lessons that we have learned. These are the recommendations that I would like to put out. These are the frameworks, the protocols I think we should put in place so that next time something similar happens, we are not caught off guard. So that next time we can respond, with agility, we can respond appropriately. Then number 14, if it is within your role and it is within your ability, your tenure, implement these new protocols. Dr. Miles Monroe said that the success of a leader is right. I'm going to try to find how he put this. He said, a leader's measured not by their success, but by the success of their successors, right? How well you prepare others to succeed is the mark and the legacy of your leadership. It is not just when you're in that leadership seat that you are a great leader and you're doing great things. It is also when, as a leader, you're able to set the environment, you're able to set the protocols, you're able to set the ecosystem for others that come in to be able to plug and play, for others that come in to be able to understand what is at stake and be able to thrive based on the protocols, based on the framework, based on your recommendations. And then number 15, whenever you are a leader that is not in control, yet you still need to influence outcomes, and you went and you mapped stakeholders, those that do have either expertise or referent relationship, legitimate power, they have coercive power, they have the networks. You want to publicly acknowledge and thank all stakeholders in their groups, mention the different groups, but critical stakeholders by name. You don't just want to survive this thing and then, close the book and say, we survived the thing, moving on to the next thing. You want to publicly mention all that came along to support you through this, so that even though you were not in control, even though the situation maybe was new, maybe was sudden, was uncomfortable for you, you were able to see the entire organization or the industry or the nation, if you're the ultimate head of your country, you're able to see things through because of the support, because of the counsel, because of the resources, because of the references of others. That is really, really key. Because what's going to happen when you've done step 1 to 15, when you're a leader that is not in control, yet you still have to lead, and you've gone through these steps, you've sought counsel, you have leveraged others that do have the expertise or the networks or the power to influence outcomes positively, and you continue to consult them, you continue to report to them, to inform them, you continue to accept their input, is that at the end of this, now you are in charge when you actually started off not in control. If you went through step 1 to 15, you will get to the end of it as the leader who is in charge, when you started it as a leader who is not in control. And if you took the lessons from this, you documented them, you enforce them in protocols, in frameworks, then you have the blueprint, either for yourself or for others that come after you, to be able to face similar disruptions, if that is what you're going through, or being a leader that's not in ultimate leadership seat, to be able to influence the outcomes that even though you are not in control of, you are ultimately accountable for. I want to end with this quote. This is from Lolly Daskal. It says, "The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be." When you are a leader who is not in control, you want to be in a position where you're able to influence those that are in control. or those that do have the expertise, or those that do have the legitimate power to influence, or those that do have the resources and they can choose who to allocate it to and who not to. You want to be able to influence them to come alongside you, to buy in and support you in what you would not be able to do without their support. So the greater the impact you want to make, even when you're not in the ultimate leadership seat, even when you're not in control, the greater your influence needs to be. If, let's say, your people listen to a person that reports to you, a subordinate of yours, if you'd like to use that word, right? A direct report of yours, or it may be several lines down. You don't want to flex and say, I am the leader in charge, and therefore you don't need that. Grow your influence with that person that they defer to, that they would rather listen to. That is what you want to work on. If you don't have the budget, and therefore what you want to do, you're not in control of the finances that can be allocated toward it. You want to be able to influence and get the buy-in of those that do have the budget, who will then support you, who will then come alongside and allocate the budget or give you in-kind support to make sure that you're able to influence the outcomes that you seek, the outcomes that you're ultimately accountable for, even when you're not in control. So influence, whether I am sitting in the leadership seat or I am not in this instance, in this situation. You still want to influence those that you have mapped as the groups and the individuals that would be critical to your success. If you need help in increasing your leadership power and effectiveness to influence outcomes, whether it is your personal, team, organizational, industry, or even nation's outcomes, I have a 9-month tailored global leadership coaching program that I welcome you to. Reach out to us on operations@modestamahiga.com. We'll put that email on the description below this video, below this podcast episode, and you can contact me to help you to come alongside you on this journey of influencing outcomes as ultimately the accountable person who may not always be the person who is in control. If you have enjoyed this Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, please do share this with other people and write a review of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. This lets other people know the kind of value that they can expect to have. When they see other leaders that have benefited from it, other leaders that are applying the things that we're sharing here. And so that also means, please, I know you're sharing your review of the podcast. If you would like to send in a testimonial that you have applied some of the insights, the strategies, the lessons from the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, either when I've come in on these deep dives or when we've had one of the other leaders across the globe that have joined me as guests, do write to us on operations@modestamahiga.com and give us your testimonial, and we'll make sure to read your review or your testimonial on the next episode. Thank you again for joining me on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I am Modesta Mahiga, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.